I think it was Munich 2011, the World Cup. And in the route setting, we wanted a spectacular boulder that was maybe facing the audience and with a jump, maybe an easy boulder, but yeah, just for like a good show. And we had a big half sphere, a half ball, really big, maybe almost 2 meters. So we didn't want to put it so high. That's the truth. That's why it's low on the wall. It's because it was so heavy. And so we made a boulder with one big ball, one volume, and one finish hold in a kind of a little corner. And the idea was you climbed on it, and then you made a kind of a balance move, and then just step on the other volume and catch the finish hold. And it was quite easy, just very mental and very scary and uncomfortable. So not so easy to do in a competition situation. And when Dmitry came out, he did the mantle, and he was having some trouble to stand up on the ball, and then he was waiting for a long time and hesitating, and he had a little smile on his face, and you could see he was looking at the last hold and thinking. And finally he decided to jump, and he didn't use the foot, so he jumped directly to the finish hold. And he caught it, and it's maybe one of the most spectacular swings in maybe the history of competition climbing. And his feet were swinging above the top of the wall. He was completely upside down. And I was watching from the back of the crowd, and I saw him do it. And maybe like 1 second before he did it, I realized what he was going to do, and I was very scared.
First of all, at this time in 2011, I was coaching the Germans, and the picture actually that we took for the logo was taken by my girlfriend, who was at the World Cup in Munich to take pictures. So the video that you might have seen, on YouTube, that's I think not even I took it. An athlete of mine took it who didn't go to the finals. And but the picture itself is by my girlfriend, and at this time, as you know, in 2011, all the Russians were the strongest, but especially, of course, I think the World Championships were just a couple of weekends before. So Dima was world champion again. And he was really the dominant climber of this time. And like, if you ask me for beta, I actually, to be honest, I would have to check, because for me it's really not so much about beta or about anything. It was just about confidence, And there's even when he's sitting on the volume. I mean, I have to check. It's a while ago, but I think he even has a little smile. Because he's so confident that he can do the move.
Тогда был другой болдеринг, и я помню, что у нас была такая нешуточная борьба, именно не сколько с зарубежными атлетами, сколько между собой в финале был Рустам и Леха. Вот, и мы, не знаю, по-моему, мы там устроили открытый чемпионат России. Вот, и все были в очень хорошей форме. Я тогда как раз так углубился. Вообще тот год очень много изучал там спортивную психологию. Там я даже в дипломе это указывал, что там. Я помню, конкретно у меня задача была на финал пролезть 4 трассы с 4 попыток. То есть на просмотре и перед первой попыткой, если так можно сказать, анализ, выбор верного варианта, он был там, не знаю, максимальным. То есть заряжен был на все стороны. Не только физика была там на пике, но и как бы голова была готова все это выполнить. Вот. Что касается этой трассы, да, я, в принципе, не особый любитель прыжков. Тогда, наверное, как раз только подготовщики пытались как-то больше координации внести, что ли, в трассы, и это читалось, что я, как уже ранее писал, был такой вариант сделать шаг ногой и выпрыгнуть. Вот, но тогда точно я бы этого не сделал, потому что сейчас я как-то более приспособился, адаптировался к современным трассам, но тогда я точно был к этому не готов и сразу же это отсек, этот вариант. Был более еще вариант просто сделать глубокий шаг без выпрыгивания. Там, по-моему, как же его зовут из Словении? Бичан Клемен. Вот, по-моему, он пролез в статике. Ну, я даже не видел, не знаю. Он высокий, ему, видимо, растяжка там и его там пластика позволила как-то встать в распорке и более так, менее динамично сделать финиш. Вот, и, ну, опять же повторюсь, что тогда был прям очень сильно готов, и я на просмотре видел, что там стоит такая прям дверная ручка. Просто самая главная задача была попасть именно в эту дырку, в кольцо, в рабочую часть. И дальше, даже если меня там, как бы меня там не мотануло, как бы тогда была такая железная хватка. Вот, так что были какие-то сомнения, да, видео тоже смотрю, улыбаюсь, какие-то, наверное, защитные реакции. Но для меня это был как бы, ну, я был уверен на 100%, что я это сделаю.
And I've seen many, like even in warm up, like at this time, the way Dima, like he was sitting in L-sit on his fingertips, you know, in isolation. But really, like I remember I went in. That was in Barcelona. It was really hot in isolation, and they put the toilet in the isolation, so it was really smelly and so on. It was half dark, and everybody was really suffering, but because it was so hot and we couldn't get out. And I went to the toilet and I passed Dima, and he was like on his fingertips and L-sit, like his eyes closed. He was meditating. There was no trembling, nothing, like in perfect control. And then when I came back, he was still in this position, you know? And it wasn't like for him at this time, it wasn't really a matter of strength. He was really like, it was a strength meditation.
When we tested the boulder, we thought it was too easy. And we talked about making the finish hold quite bad, making it upside down. And it was kind of a big hole, and you could catch inside. And one side was a good jug, and one side was very flat. And many times we turned it and we decided, make it easy, make it hard. And it was a big discussion in the team. And finally, we decided to make it easy. And if we had made it hard, Dmitry would not have held that move. And he would have slipped and maybe from a very dangerous position had a really bad fall. And for me, in my job as a route setter, it was like really scary because I realized some of my responsibility in... It's not Dmitry's fault. He, of course, you know, he had the choice and the possibility to do it. But it, you know, so safety became very different in my mind after that. And it was a very big contrast because for the audience and maybe for Dmitry as well, it was like a very exciting and very like cool moment. And for me, it was very like cold and scary and like almost a disaster.
Скажи, пожалуйста, это была знакомая для тебя зацепка сама по себе? Уже приходилось до соревнований вот, где-то за нее держаться?
Нет, не приходилось. Ну просто там...
Было видно, да, что хорошая она?
Невооруженным глазом видно, что там очень большой зацеп. Да, сейчас бы, если бы это был современный болдеринг, то, наверное, подготовщик на финише в эту дырку еще одну зацепку вставил, закрыл рабочую часть. И да, пришлось бы, наверное, там помучиться, попрыгать несколько раз, возможно, и вот координационно сделать. Наверное, если бы так сделали тогда, то, наверное, я бы пробовал все-таки через дополнительный зацеп пролезть.
Ты знаешь, подготовщик рассказал, что очень долго они колебались, как ее поставить, хорошей стороной или плохой. Там у нее была еще пассивная часть. То есть, в принципе, если бы ты увидел, что там не очень хорошая ручка, наверное, бы не прыгал так. Или как?
Ну да, скорее всего, да, смотреть другой вариант. Просто подготовщики решили как бы дать всем спортсменам пролезть эту трассу.
Он просто рассказал, что когда увидел, как ты прыгнул, у него сердце там в груди замерло. Он думал, что если ты не удержишь, что там можешь упасть головой вниз и так далее. И думал, а если бы я ее поставил другой стороной, то он бы точно упал, я бы убил там чемпиона мира, короче. В общем, очень переживал на эту тему.
Ну,
Именно за безопасность.
болдеринг, в принципе, самый такой, если так можно сказать, травмоопасный вид скалолазания. Так что нередко с каждым случается, можно, не знаю, там на ровном месте там где-то не успеть сгруппироваться, упасть и получить травму. И, ну, я думаю, что даже если я сорвался, я бы успел как-то скоординироваться, и все было бы нормально.
So it was a powerful moment of like my route setting career. And then the funny story is I maybe a little bit forgot about it, 2011. And then some years later, Udo Neumann and Niklas Weichmann opened a gym in Germany called Stuntwerk. And the logo is kind of like a danger sign with a climber doing a big swing, and it's Dmitry. And they made a video where you see like how this movement became the logo, and I was like, whoa, it's kind of strange that this very powerful moment, like you said, it's like a layer where it has many different experiences or moments for different people. And yeah, this is my story about that boulder.
I think my girlfriend was the only one who captured this moment. Like all the other photographers that were not as experienced, you know, they basically they didn't get him on the very highest, on the apex of the swing. You know, he went out of the viewfinder of all the other photographers. But before I briefed my girlfriend a lot, you know, like to really make sure that this wouldn't happen. And also, if you look, there's a lot of in the original photo, but I show you, it's on our whiteboard. I show you, we did a little postcard. And so this is another part of it, that you rarely can do photos like this, you know, where people are so confident to have their feet above their head. So after the finals, and my girlfriend had this photo, we knew that we had something really special there. And then when we were starting to with Stuntwerk, you know, it was really okay. We have one really fantastic shot, and we made a logo out of it. And no, it was not even a question at this time. That was and even nowadays, you know, like even I took a lot of pictures in the meantime. But if I had to choose, you know, what is really cool position, I would still consider this photo.